Welcome back to another one of my stories. I had something in mind to speak about that has been in my mind lately, which is pretty interesting. How many of you can relate to like being in bed at night and then all of a sudden you start to think about certain things and moments that you experienced, let's say in like middle school or really at any young age in school where you kind of had an embarrassing moment or you had like a really weird moment that makes you like, oh, why am I thinking about this right now? And I've had that happen to me twice over these last few weeks. And so, why not record myself talking about it? Because it's a good way for me to practice speaking. So, haha. Yeah. So, to set up for one of them, I'll try to put them both in this one video, but no promises because I tend to ramble. And my last video was actually like 25 minutes. And the hilarious part was, at the beginning, I was like, I recorded this already, and it was 25 minutes. So I'm going to try and not make it 25 minutes. And it was 26 minutes. So I got to watch it because I can definitely ramble, and I can spin, like, I can, yeah, I don't want to do that. I mean, I do, but it's not really watchable, whatever. So, to set it up, I'm about 5 or 6 years old, and me and my family, who was my mom, my dad, my sister, and my older brother. Also, just to, right, my sister and my brother are both 5 and 6 years, 6 years, oh boy, 6 years, above me in age. And so they were definitely quite a bit older. I mean, they still are, obviously. But on that street that we lived on, a lot of new families were also like on that street. So it was really cool because a lot of the people that my siblings knew from school lived on our street. And this was like maybe a year before I had been in school, or maybe it was like my first year in school. I don't quite remember. But one of the other younglings on that street was a kid by the name of Mason. And Mason was a good friend of mine at that point. I mean, obviously we're young, so it's whatever. But, Mason was kind of one of my friends on that street who was cool. I actually had a few. I had a friend named Ron who was he was awesome, and I hung out with him a lot more, beyond Mason and what happened. But so Mason had one of those like miniature vehicles that is like a toy, and it's small enough to where a child can sit in the vehicle, and it has a wheel to like ride, and it even has a pedal, right, to where if you press on the pedal, you would actually make the vehicle move. And I was obsessed with these things, and I thought they were awesome. And Mason had one that was actually a Jeep. And Jeeps from that age and even now are like among my favorite, my favorite like models and makes of just any vehicle in general. And so I was in love with this thing. And his sister also had one, and it was a Jeep. I believe Mason's Jeep was like red, and his sister's was like hot pink. But anyway, one day I was riding, and I was in the Jeep, what I'm saying? I was in the whip, and yeah. So what had happened basically is I was riding it back to Mason's house because I thought, hey, I've been riding his Jeep for a while, so I'm gonna take it back and I'm gonna let him ride it. Pat on the back for however old I was, trying to share, right? Yikes. But unfortunately, as I was riding up to Mason's house, I saw him, he saw me, he runs up to me. And so I'm riding up, and then, I'm at a complete, I stop, okay? And he runs up and he's like excited, and I'm like, okay, haha, cool. Um, okay, like now I need to remove myself from Jeep so that way Mason is able to then, put himself inside said Jeep and proceed to ride it for his, for his enjoyment. So I put one hand on like the window on my side and then one hand on like my seat behind me. And as I go to like put weight on those two things to try and like remove myself out of the Jeep, right? I can't say the word I'm trying to say. I go to oh my goodness. I go to stand up, right? And as I'm standing up, I realize that accidentally I put my foot on the pedal, and like it's enough weight to like make the Jeep move. And unfortunately, Mason had one of his feet in front of one of the wheels. And that was the beginning of the end. And so as soon as I realized I had put my foot on the pedal, which was like half a second, I realized and I took it off and I was like, oh man, because I didn't want to put my foot on the pedal. But it was too late. What happened had already happened. I had basically like rode the Jeep and it got onto his foot and then it rolled onto his foot and then back off. Now, I don't know how heavy those things are. Maybe like 20 pounds. So kind of heavy for like a child. And I was also in it. And I was like putting weight on it to like try and, remove myself from the Jeep. And needless to say, he was like sad. He was crying. He was yelling and like screaming. And I can vividly picture in front of me his sister in the hot pink Jeep that was, had no roof. It was a convertible hot pink Jeep. And she's just standing there with her hands on the wheels, right? 10 and 2. And she's just like looking at me. And as soon as I saw that, it rocked my world. I felt like I ruined like their lives as a family. And at that point I began to break down into tears, and I don't even know if my siblings remember this. I'm pretty sure at least one of them were there with me. And I feel like my mom was like already like walking over to like pick us up to walk back home, and Mason was screaming and yelling, and his mom starts to like run outside and starts freaking out, and I'm freaking out. Then and then like his sister's freaking out. Everyone's freaking out, and I kind of just passed out. I don't know what happened. I passed out, and I don't remember anything else after that point. What I do know is that like a few months later, he and his family moved away. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. But now that I've set up the story, let's move ahead a bit in my life. 7th grade, middle school, right? This was a new year for me. I had just actually moved to a better city with my family, and I was attending a pretty nice middle school. It was much better than what I was at the year, at the year prior in 6th grade. Yeah. So, lo and behold, as I'm sort of, experiencing things at this school and like seeing what it's like and seeing people and, making new friends and whatnot, which thankfully, despite my speech, I was pretty good at it. I see this kid that really looks a lot like Mason. Like, he is a spitting image of him. And I'm going to be totally honest with you. I'm not even sure if that kid's name was actually Mason. It started with an M. That's all I really remember. I don't remember anything else. And I don't know, the name Mason, like, it rings a bell and it sounds familiar. Maybe it was something else, and I never had him in, like, as a peer in one of my, I can't say this word, in one of my classes, that year or the next year. So I don't know what this kid's name is, but he looks just like Mason. It's like I can recognize him. I can see his face as I see myself riding in the Jeep. And so in my mind, I'm like, this kid is Mason. But I don't feel the need to, like, walk up to him and be like, hey, Mason, maybe. I don't know if you recognize me, but, I don't know if you had lived on this street in this city, years ago and blah, blah, blah. I didn't want to do that because if I was wrong, I would look weird. If I was right, this kid could have, memories of this one kid this one kid on his street who had a big head, who was riding in his Jeep and rolled over his small 6-year-old feet, right? And caused him and his family pain, right? Like, to him, I'm like to him, he's Batman, I'm the Joker, right? Like, I affected him. Obviously, that's a bit dramatic, but I mean, what if it's him? And what if he remembers? Like, I don't know if he's mad at me about that or whatever. So a few months into that year in 7th grade, it's the end of the day. I am at the front of the school, waiting for my school bus to arrive. And because that day, for whatever reason, I can't say the word without saying school. I have to say school bus to say that second word. How interesting is that? Speech impediment. Okay, yeah, well, that's fine. So I'm waiting for my school bus because it's a bit late. So me and all the other people that ride my school bus, like 15 or so people. I say people because I can't say, like, I can't say the word that, like, makes more sense. Like, 15 kids, right? So I just say people. Waiting, right, to ride that school bus. And lo and behold, I see Mason and someone else walking with him. And I'm assuming, she is a friend of his or something. I've seen him with her, a few times that year so far. So I was like, oh, that's cool. And so myself and all the other kids waiting to ride the bus, I can say them now, I can say those words, are, like, waiting at the front of the school, like, but we're leaning, okay, so we're all leaning on a wall. That's like, and we're sitting or standing, right? We're just waiting by this wall in front of the school to be able to be on our way home. And I noticed that Mason and his friend are, like, walking directly, like, in front of us. And I mean, it's the front of the school, so there's a giant walkway, right? Like, it's massive. I mean, there's a bunch of room in between, between, like, the road and, like, the people and the wall. There's a bunch of room. There's like 15 feet at least. There's a lot of room there. But for whatever reason, Mason and his friend are, like, right in front of us. Like, if the wall's here, right, they are here. And we are somewhere in the middle, right? Just like, and it's like, why are they walking so, like, next to us when there's, like, no one else, walking? Like, there's space for them to, take a bit of a wider route. But they don't, for whatever reason. And it, like, messes with my mind a bit. And it's like, why are they doing that? It's like, just move away, because there's potential risk here because all someone has to do is extend a leg, and all of a sudden, you got Mason and his friend, they can trip and fall. And I'm so like in my own head about this, and I'm like thinking about it, like, just move away like a few feet. What's the point of this? And I'm so like in my own head about it that I myself literally start to extend my own leg, like barely anything, like a few inches, and it's enough to trip it's enough to trip his, not Mason, but his friend, who is, I'm assuming they're like in a relationship, which, middle school relationship, not really real, but, I digress. I trip her. Unintentionally, unwillingly, I extend my own leg out and trip her. And I feel awful right away. Like, because I'm thinking about, them and the risks of them being tripped by someone, leaning on this wall, because they're so close to us. They're walking so close that it's like there's risk. And I'm so I'm not even looking at them. I started looking at them for like a second, and then I just like looked away, and I'm like looking up, and I probably look like a maniac, but like I'm just thinking about it. And it's like all someone has to do is do that, and you can trip. And I did that. And she trips. Right away, I go, oh no, right? Because I have become the thing that I've sought to destroy. I was wanting to stop this from happening, and yet I become the one that makes it happen. So I trip her. She falls over. I feel kind of bad. It's not that bad of a fall. She she trips, she sort of falls, and then she sort of really falls. But it's not that bad. I mean, she was able to manage it, right? But regardless, I felt bad. And I was like, oh man, I was wanting to say something and apologize and say, hey, I did not mean to do that. Are you okay? But all I could say is, oh no. And then Mason, or whatever the heck this kid's name is, I'm right. He is in my face, yelling at me, screaming. Now it is the end of the day. It's middle school. It's the outside. There's vehicles. There's there's people speaking and yelling and it's loud. So even though he's sort of in my face and yelling, it's not loud enough to to make anyone really look at us. Maybe except the people that were right by us, but. So it wasn't something that attracted that many, people. Really no one. But he's really in my face yelling how could you do that? I can't believe you tripped her. What's wrong with you? Are you insane? And I mean, he's really kind of flipping out on me. And initially I was like, dude, hold your horses, man. But with my speech impediment, all I could really say was, it was an accident. And I am repeating this 5 times. And because he's in my face, I'm like, oh no, man. And so I get in his face, and I'm just saying it was an accident. And I'm trying to make him realize that I didn't mean to do that. And but I'm in his face yelling at him that this was not on purpose. I did not mean to trip her. It was totally an accident. And I was wanting to say something to her, but Mason is angry because not only did I trip who, seems to be someone who is his friend, potentially someone he's in a relationship with, or whatever, but I ran over his feet with a very small Jeep that had no roof. It was a convertible, and I ran over his feet. So not only did I trip his friend years later, but years prior, I ran over his foot with his own miniature Jeep. So if this is really the kid, maybe he recognizes me. I don't know. Maybe this is years of pain that he's expressing here. And so I'm, I try to relax. And I'm like, okay, listen, it was an accident. I didn't mean to. And I actually am able to say, like, all of that. And I say, I'm sorry, but not, like, directly to her. At this point, she's already back up on her feet, and she's just kind of waiting for him to walk away. And I'm not going to do anything. I was not the kid that would, like, do anything. Obviously, if someone would, like, be rude with me or, like, did anything to me, I would, act in self whatever. I can't say it, but I think you understand. So, I mean, I was never the kid to, like, do anything. So I just wanted him to walk away. I just wanted, like, that to be, I wanted it to be over. And so he just sort of walks away, and that's kind of it. I never really spoke to him again in middle school, except, like, that next year, but, like, near the end of the year. And because we had the same, I think it was PE. I think we both had PE that next year. But I never really, I never said much to him, and I don't know his name. I don't remember his name. It was a bunch of people in that, in that PE class, so I never heard his name, or even really, like, I don't know, like, it's interesting, because I still remember that, and I don't know if he even knows who I was, because I'm pretty sure that was the kid who I went rogue on him with his own Jeep, and then I tripped his friend years later in middle school. I felt so bad. There's actually one more thing that I didn't want to talk about that was also in middle school that was kind of like a similar situation, but I guess I'll save that for another video because this one's already pretty long. So I appreciate you watching if you did. Yeah, this has been a pretty cool experience making a few of these YouTube videos just to, like, practice speaking and just, putting myself out there as someone else who has this type of speech impediment and just saying, hey, it's okay. And to be clear, my speech in these videos is actually, like, surprisingly not bad, but in, like, the real world, it can get pretty rough. But anyway, I appreciate you guys watching me ramble on for 20 minutes. I'll see you guys in the next video, whenever that may be, hopefully soon. So yeah.